You know what I'm really happy with right now?
No.
Staying up till 12:30 to watch the Bengals last night. Just
Why even bother? I mean, have you seen this team? No.
they won. They pulled it off with a backup
That's great.
quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
They
that's
pull.
wow. Yeah.
Jake
Hopefully
Browning
they'll
went
make the
off. Like
playoffs. That'll be amazing. Anyway.
Anyways, there's a weird bug in Windows right now.
There is.
Some people may have experienced this or not.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, HP software is being forced onto certain devices, and some people's printers are just renamed HP printers.
Yeah.
Microsoft
Yeah.
acknowledged the bug, but they're not really sure why. So,
So here's the thing about the HP. The HP app is called Smart. It's like HP Smart, and because we have HP printers, we have this software anyway, right? So
mhm.
every time I install Windows, HP Smart is auto installed. It's just something that happens. So I don't really. I saw that story and I was like, I don't wonder. I don't know. I don't know. So, but yeah, the renaming of printers, that's a new one. And actually, I should look that up just in case. No, hasn't happened here. So I don't know. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Mhm.
And Microsoft's taking over all the printer driver stuff, aren't they? So
Yes, they are,
what could go
which
wrong?
off to a great start.
Yeah, it's funny. Oh, well.
I don't know. I mean, that's
A couple of I'm going to address this in the comments later today, but
mhm.
I saw some people kind of going back and forth about this. Um, the new Outlook is going to replace the classic desktop Outlook, just full stop, right? Some people seem confused about this. It is happening. The question is when it's going to happen, right?
Mhm.
So we know that mail and news, sorry, mail and calendar in Windows 11 and I guess 10 will be replaced by this app as well. That's going to happen sooner.
Mhm.
I think it's next September, something like that. But the Outlook team, they put a video up. It wasn't Ignite. It was maybe a couple of months before Ignite discussing this topic. And the way they described it was, we have this list of things it has to do based on feedback, right? That customers will not switch unless it does these things.
Mhm.
And once that is all there, it will be 1 to 2 years before we actually force you to stop using the old client. So there's no specific time frame, but there is a time frame, right? It is happening. The only, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's anything like the only niggling issue I think for people is going to be it's not going to support COM style plugins, right?
Mhm.
It's using the newer web model, which is now several years old, but it will support PST files. It already supports offline use. One of those big things that was a complaint in the beginning, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, that's happening. I'm a little confused. This is still confusing to people, but maybe it's just because there's no specific schedule quite yet, but there will be. It's happening. So I just throwing that out there, just in case
Yeah.
anyone is confused on that matter, because it seems like a lot of people are. But
Hmm.
I don't know.
I was just reading. There was actually a thread in the forums, and I have read the title and just a little bit of it. But it
Okay.
says, "Is the end of XAML coming?" Which would be
Yeah.
really odd, because
Well,
Microsoft just built all the XAML islands into Windows. So maybe it is perfect timing that they just did some tooling, and now they're
I mean, well, so XAML is like a lot of things, like the .NET framework, right? It,
mhm.
it never really goes away. Like, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, that's
anyone
true.
who wants to use it can always use it. The question is whether Microsoft is going to replace SAML, which is like an XML based markup language, I guess.
Hmm.
That in this case describes user interfaces for apps, and also things like the taskbar and the start menu, and that they build the UIs for those things that way. That developers use, and is going to be replaced with sort of a declarative form of C sharp, or I guess it would be declarative extensions to C sharp or whatever, where you can describe the UI in C sharp in an elegant fashion. You can already describe UI in C sharp if you want to, but it's procedural. It's not
Hmm.
great. So I mean, I'm not a professional developer, but I can tell you that this is the style of programming that Dart uses in Flutter. So Flutter is this
Mm.
cross-platform network. So when you build a UI, you're not using an XML variant. You're actually just using the same language you're using to write the code for the program. So Dart, which is like C sharp or C++ or C or whatever, um, It's an interesting style. I think the rationale for switching is that XAML never really worked. I mean, and I mean that sort of broadly because obviously it works, but the goal was to create like what you see is what you get. Visual editors for applications like we used to have in Visual Basic or in WinForms back in the day, and they've never been able to do it properly, right? And so maybe there's a better way. And so I don't know anything about this happening or not happening, but it doesn't help that there's about 1,700 XAML variants. That
Yes.
The syntax is different between different environments. This is a problem. I don't know. It's just a fascinating thing to me. I don't know how much you know about this, Brad, or how many people even care about this stuff. But like, you can in object-oriented languages, there's this notion of classes, and classes are this thing that describes an object or whatever. And you can have partial classes in XAML and partial classes in C#, and they together form the full class. So when you're describing a window or something or a control, you can visually lay it out in XAML and then write the event handlers in C#, and those two things combined create that entire class that represents that thing. It's actually pretty cool, but XAML is also now about 20. It's at least 20 years old, 22 years old, something like that. It maybe hasn't scaled.
Maybe it's just getting started. I don't know.
I don't know. I saw that post and I was like, I actually like XAML, but I can see it. Because looking at Dart, I want to say, I think Swift UI is also like using that language Swift to describe UI instead of using like an XML based language. I think I'm not as up on that, but Flutter is that. Like Flutter does do this, and it seems to work pretty well.
The other thing that's happening too, speaking of deprecation or whatever you want to call it, somebody on Twitter, one of the people, I think the book is closed, one of those guys, noted that the Windows 10 taskbar, there's a new flag in the latest Canary version that fully removes it.
You mean for Windows 11? Removes the Windows 10 taskbar.
Yes, sorry, removes the Windows 10 taskbar in Windows 11. I was like,
11. Is there a Canary for Windows 10? Okay, so yeah, right. I'm fascinated to discover there's any code for Windows 10 taskbar in Windows 11.
No, so it's heavily abused. Okay. So some of it's used, and this makes me wonder if they're changing this process or updating it finally. So when you do when you do the out-of-box experience for Windows 11, like that fancy UI that looks nice or whatever, I believe the Windows 10 taskbar is actually technically present during that experience, but it's just hidden. And so
that makes sense because that is, in fact, the Windows 10 setup experience, which was the Windows 8 setup experience, which was all the way back to Vista, literally. Exactly. So it's the same. It's just been modified, So it's prettier in Windows 11, but it's just a bitmap on top of whatever used to be there.
Which makes me think that they are finally at the point where they are going to update that, which would make sense since we know that Windows 12 is reportedly coming first availability sometime in June, something like that. As a beta would be my guess, but whatever, that would make sense. Now, how this impacts and why I'm really invested in this, because this could impact what Stardock does. However, Start 11 is perfectly fine because we never touched it. But some of the other tools out there, all they do is they just resurface that taskbar. And so I'll be curious to see how Microsoft actually does this, because if they just do this, like make this change in Windows 11, a lot of devices are going to have a not good time.
Yeah. So I wasn't aware of the taskbar being present during the out-of-box experience, but I confronted by that information, I would guess they've got all these things happening with the EU. They've got Windows 12 or whatever coming down the pike. Maybe they're looking at modernizing setup, like that part of setup. And so it's part of that. It's unlikely. Well, I would be surprised to discover that they sort of semi-maliciously did this to harm people that make third-party utilities that kind of replace the taskbar or whatever. But I guess it's possible. But
I mean, I don't feel like their intention. Like,
it just doesn't feel.
It doesn't feel like it. It honestly just feels more like, hey, look, we rebuilt the Windows 11 taskbar. It's finally in shape or whatever. We redid the system tray. That's now finally shipping. We don't need that Windows 10 taskbar anymore. So let's just remove it because it's legacy code at this point.
Yeah. So, but that decision's that's an Apple decision, right? I mean, Microsoft, generally, I mean, things are changing, but they sort of respect the community, and
Yeah.
if they know how often it's used, right? So maybe they're seeing it's not used a lot,
Or there's
yeah,
some
like you
feature
said,
in Windows
maybe the answer is going to
12
be,
that
look,
they
yeah,
need.
we have a new taskbar. It works now. It does all those things. Well, it doesn't do all those things, right? It doesn't do toolbars. It does,
Yeah.
whatever. So I think at some point getting rid of legacy cruft is, a good thing, right? This is a
Sure.
potential security vector. There's all kinds of issues, but just supporting it, is probably expensive. So yeah, I
Yeah, I'm
don't know.
not
I don't know how
sure
many.
what else it did in. I don't know, and maybe this is related. I don't know. Remember, they just
Right.
shipped the new File Explorer as well. So maybe that was the last component. They're like, we shouldn't do anything until that's in place because
Mm-hmm.
whatever scenario.
Yeah, I don't know. That could be.
Yeah, not
It's.
sure.
I mean, Canary, doesn't mean anything anymore. Like in the old days, we could say, well, it's probably going to be,
Right.
next fall or something. I mean, this could happen anytime, really. So
Yeah, I don't know. Like that is the big question. Is
that
like,
is a problem. Yeah.
when is this going to trickle to everybody? I don't know.
I this company does not operate in this fashion, but what you would like to see here, what we would like to see is this notion of some developer blog, Microsoft saying, hey, look, this is coming down the pike. Here's the schedule. There's a very small percentage of utilities, apps, whatever, that rely on this thing. Here's how you have to change your code because we have this new functionality that does the same thing. And here's the list of things that are just going to be not working because they're old fashioned, and we're walking away from that stuff. And that's that bit of obvious clarity, I think, is something we're not going to see, but I would hope they would do something like that, because the other response is just to wait for the complaints to come in and say, guys, this stuff was undocumented and was unsupported. So the problem was you using it, not us not supporting it. And I hope they don't take that.